Within the network, over time, we've developed three really big goals, and I think that they speak right to the equity question. And our first one is every learner crossing the stage with dignity, purpose, and options. And we haven't moved off that goal for 10 years, and we were hoping that by 2020 we'd be there. Well, we're not. But I think the language is really important. It's every learner. That means every Indigenous learner, every kid in care, every kid. And with dignity, that they've been treated with respect in the school, that they haven't been on the receiving end of anything racist, homophobic, whatever it is, any ist, that school has provided them with a pathway to a purpose in life, and that they have genuine options, that school is opening up doorways, not shutting them down. I think that's our equity challenge, and I'm really struck by the work in Sea to Sky District, which, their graduation rates have improved markedly, but they're not satisfied with that because they're asking, is this path really creating options for kids? And they're finding that no, not for every kid is that happening yet. And so that's their next challenge, is to say, how can we develop programs or support kids in programs that are at a high degree of challenge so that they can have genuine options. And I just love that never being satisfied with the status quo and always looking for where's our next move. So for me, every means every. And I think that we can measure that. And I think we can tell the story about how we're doing that, and we need to be able to do that. So that's kind of my first kick at it. How about you?
You'd be surprised to know that I really agree with that. I think and it's so interesting because it's resonated with the 10 networks around the world now. It resonates with everybody, I think, who has a big sense of purpose. And I want to do a call out to Simon Sinek's new book about purpose. It's writing about the infinite purpose, and I think that's what we're all trying to do. Like, we're never going to stop trying to make sure that kids, for their 13 years of schooling, that they have genuine options. And the answers might not just be within the school, they might be in the articulation to the next set of opportunities. So the options and that's a new skill for us as formal leaders, making those connections. We've learned a lot recently by working with the not-for-profit sector, and I think it's been some of the best professional development that we've had, because we've learned a whole range of things, and we've met a whole lot of people that could really help the educational system through that and provide some of those wraparound services that sometimes it's hard for us to do in individual schools. I think another thing about equity, though, is sometimes the equity conversation is kind of, perhaps often in departments of education, it's, how can we close the gap? In England right now, it's how can we make sure that kids aren't excluded for school, because 10% of kids actually are told that they can't come to school, which we found quite amazing as Canadian educators. In British Columbia, though, I think the gap, when you look at Indigenous education, has been non-Indigenous people's lack of understanding. So we're the ones with the gap. And I think principals and vice principals and informal teacher leaders and community members are doing a good job of reaching out to each other, learning more, seeing these, like we're good friends with Dr. Lorna Williams, who's just got the Order of Canada. I mean, she's just such a powerful thinker, and the more we can learn from Lorna, the better we all are. And I think it's just a different way of shaping the equity discussion, because sometimes people haven't been at the table, they haven't been in the room, they haven't been in the conversation. One of our vice principals in Central Okanagan, when he heard that part about options, and when he heard the superintendent talk about it, as soon as he got back to school, he went up to the band office and said, "We're going to have all of the career counseling here." It's that. It's a switch. It's a mindset that's different, and I think acquiring. I think that's our third goal, that we all need to know more, and that makes us a richer system. And I think fairness does flow out of that. So I think it's good that we're addressing it, and I think we need to continue.
And I think that, the first question in the spiral of inquiry is what's going on for our learners and how do we know? And I think we really need to sometimes push the pause button and say, what's going on for our learners? And how do we know? Seriously. And one of the things when we were looking at the transition work is we had a very traditional idea of transition. It was moving from grade 7 to grade 8 or from grade 12 to post-secondary. But what we've are increasingly realizing is that transitions happen all the time, and that some of our most vulnerable kids are moving in and out of school, sometimes 3, 4, 5 schools during the year. What do we know about their experience, and how are we addressing that? So I think we need to really kind of bring that curiosity to knowing who are our kids, what's going on for them, and why does it matter, and how can we help all of them, regardless of what the story is. I'm just, I think I'm moved and impressed and grateful to be an educator in BC, because I think we're taking these issues really seriously. We may not have the answers, but we're asking the right questions, and I think that's the starting place. And just to finish on that, when our third big goal is that all of us develop an understanding and appreciation, respect for Indigenous ways of knowing. And we've been really, really struck by work that we've done in Sweden, in Barcelona, in Wales. It doesn't matter where we are, we introduce the First Peoples principles of learning. And in every case, people say, that makes so much sense. And we've had principals come up at the end of the session saying, this is the first time that I felt like I belonged in this setting, because my father was a member of this group, or my grandmother was a Sami and was never able to talk about it. So I think that the work on equity in BC is having a ripple effect in ways that we don't even really know in other places. I think we should be proud of as BC educators, and it should motivate us to go harder, go stronger, and never give up.
Yeah, and I think what you introduced, Judy, is that it's a very holistic model, a deep model of learning and understanding, which I think is going into the fibers of our process. I think it's also fair to say, and this is a question for your professional learning people, it's certainly the case that young people who learn, no matter what system they're in, if they learn to read well by the age 9 or 10, there's a much greater chance of them having dignity, purpose, and options all the way through, and actually getting, an extra 10 years of life, all of the big equity things that matter. So I just have a slight question mark in my own mind, if in our excitement around the curriculum competencies, if there's a bit of a tendency now at intermediate and secondary to say, well, the foundations, they do that there. And, okay, well, I've got a grade 5 now and that person can't read. Not framing it as part of the work, because we're very excited about doing the newer work. And I just think we need to keep our eye on that. I was concerned when I saw some national reading assessment results and saw that we seem to be dipping a little bit in intermediate comprehension, being able to make inferences. If you go back to that fake news and what Finland's doing, you know what, we need kids to be highly competent, and we need that, just like with the writing and the reading processes and the speaking, the oracy processes, we need that to go all the way through. So it's just a question. I know some systems didn't choose to call them foundations, they called them competencies, and so they all have a kind of equal weight in conversation. It's just something I think interesting to throw around in a roundtable situation, and to make sure that we address it if it is a genuine matter of concern. It would bother me if it was trending in the wrong direction, I guess I'd have to say.